Welcome, everybody, to the Pick Six Podcast. I'm Sam McKewon, along with Evan Bland. Tom Shatel will join us in a minute, and we have a special guest, Dirk Chatelain from the Omaha World-Herald, former Omaha World-Herald staff writer. He's the Gretna gentleman now. He's out there. He's out there in the country, in the Republic of Gretna.
Ambassador.
Keeps growing. How are you?
Guys, I'm super excited. This is great to see you. Feels like no time at all has passed. So while you are working your tails off and putting in 110 hours a week, I'm sitting here and trying to figure out how to get a half-court offense to work for 8th grade basketball players and all that good stuff. So it's super exciting to follow your work, and I probably read it more than I should, but at the same time it's kind of fun to have a break from it too.
I wanted to ask you really quickly about the BTN documentary. You were part of it, a big part of it, and I loved your contribution to it as sort of a historian and sort of a kind of an analyst of what this thing is. What did you think of the final product? What did you think of the final product? What did you think of what they had to say about the program, the history of it, sort of the magnitude of what's being accomplished down there? What did you think?
Well, first of all, it was a huge, it was a little bit ridiculous how much time they gave me, because I haven't followed it day to day like a lot of people have. But I have written about it a lot over the last 20 years and have been fascinated by the history of it. I think it's just an incredible story. You sort of take Nebraska football and mirror the development of that program, and yet do it in an even more dramatic way, because it literally started from scratch, right? Nebraska football started in the 1890s. Nebraska volleyball, add 70, 80 years to that, right? And so it's just a great story, I think, is what I most appreciate about Nebraska volleyball. They couldn't have timed it better. This is probably the landmark Nebraska volleyball season. Just week to week, it's like one thrilling thing after another. I'm so impressed by BTN's, just their videography, and the way they the way they shot the Memorial Stadium match was almost awe-inspiring, right? I wish it would have been longer. I think it would have been a great 90-minute doc. You could have gotten into some of the kind of the deeper themes of the history of it. But for the time allotted that they had, it was a home run, and I was super lucky to be part of it.
I don't know, Evan, if you got a chance to see it. It premiered like right after that Penn State match, Evan, that you and I watched in the sports bar in East Lansing.
Well, we were laughing.
I didn't see it then.
Like if you were a Penn State volleyball fan and you just had your soul crushed watching a reverse sweep on your own court, and then it immediately pans right into this deep dive on Nebraska volleyball and how great they are. Like what a double gut punch for Nittany Lion backers that night.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's a lot of Nittany Lion backers who have a lot of pride, based on the success that they've had in their program.
Sure.
But the timing of it, aside from debuting at 10:30 at night, which wasn't ideal, but to have a lead in be, as you said, a 5-setter on the road against, one of Nebraska's biggest rivals. I don't know. You guys have followed this thing as long as I have. It just feels like kind of the storybook Nebraska volleyball season of all time. I know 2000 is great, and was amazing for its surprise and everything. And 2006 was great because they won it in Omaha. And so there's been like great moments along the way, but just from a pure like game to game, standpoint, Sam, Evan, it's hard to top this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch. I think it helps that their freshmen are the way they are. They got a lot of personality. So Lainey Choboy has a ton of personality, and she's got a sense of humor, which you don't often see, but she has that. That helps them. Their center is a steady quarterback, and they've got a lot of personality on the team, and then they have this player in Merritt Beeson who's just she's the deal, and sometimes you don't always know what a transfer is going to do when they come in, but she's similar. Her impact's similar to Kelsey Robinson, but Kelsey didn't play on as good of a team as this one is, and so Beeson is that. She's a big deal, and she's done a really good job, I think, of managing the leadership role on a team. And then the other thing I would mention, obviously, they're the most athletic team on the court every time they play. And much like tennis, a sport that I know that you love as much as I do, Dirk, the reality is having a big early lead doesn't make much difference in tennis because you got to reset it every single time. And Nebraska's kind of like Djokovic. You're gonna have to beat him over 5 sets. Good luck. You're gonna have to be dominant for 3 sets in a row to win, because I don't think you're gonna outlast Nebraska over 5. They're just too athletic and they're too good. So, when Penn State took the first 2, Nevin can confirm this. I'm not trying to. I guess I am humble, right? I was like, Nebraska's going to win the match because you can't. They had not had so much taken out of them yet because Penn State was so dominant in the first set. Nebraska had a lot left in the tank. You're gonna have to take them all the way to the limit, and you're gonna have to win some sets like 28-26, take juice out of them to beat them. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think it's a special team, and I also think it's a lot of great stories. It's very sweet.
The one name that you omitted, Sam, is arguably the biggest Nebraska volleyball celebrity ever. Aside from Jordan Larson, probably Lexi Rodriguez might be the most endearing athlete they've ever had. Yeah. And just the fire that she brings to the floor and to the crowd and to the fan base. I mean, you almost pick it up just watching it on TV. She just has an intangible value, I think, that is really hard to quantify. Right. Nebraska's been a great defensive program now for 10 years since Cook sort of remade it in the midst of the struggles. 8-10 years ago, they became a defense first program. But gosh, Rodriguez is so important to the whole thing.
And I would just add, the Big Ten has elevated this program. When you think about the old Big 12 days when they're sweeping, 90% of the matches. TV has elevated this program. It's very television friendly. It's helped grow the sport. And I think the timing of it too, at the end of John Cook's career, I mean, he's at the height of his powers right now. And I think there's a fresh sense of appreciation, especially coming off of COVID and some of the seniors that had kind of worn down toward the end of that. You wondered if Nebraska's best was behind it, and it turns out that it's not. And I think people are really relishing and savoring that moment just because maybe they felt like it was gone 2 years ago.
Yeah. Hey, and I haven't thought this or said this, but it is crazy to think that Cook is doing this at 67 years old, something like that. And Tom Osborne walked away at 59?
60. Yeah.
60. Yeah.
I mean, it's John Cook does not look or feel as old as he is. And it makes you kind of glad that he didn't walk away. I really thought he might walk away about 5, 6, 7 years ago when they won the national championship. I thought that there were other things that he wanted to do. And I'm surprised he held on this long, and man, I'm glad he did, because I think he's figured some things out. I think he's changed. And I think he's just better. He's just a better manager of talent than he's ever been. And that's in that job, a huge part of it is just managing talent.
Yep. He's become a grandpa. And I don't mean that I mean that in the best way. I think the players relate to him, not like their parent, but they see him with his grandkid, and he's old enough now that I think that he comes with wisdom and not just intensity. And that's just something that comes with age. Like the 19 and 20-year-olds who regard him now are different than the 19 and 20-year-olds who regarded him 15 years ago. And he was probably just as good of a coach then, but it's just a different feeling. Like, I'm not talking to my dad, I'm talking to my grandpa. And you can tell the players respond to him and they like him and they get a kick out of him. And again, I Cook deserves a lot of credit for sure. He's the coach and the architect. I give a lot of credit to Kelly Hunter. I think she's a buffer and a glue. And I give a lot of credit to Beeson, who's tough. She doesn't seem tough. She seems sort of like like they said, a third grade teacher. But as you know, elementary school teachers are actually really tough. They got to put up with a lot. And Beeson is that. So I want to go into football, and Tom will be with us here in a minute. Dirk, you were at the game on Saturday, and you just had sometimes you do a really good job of summarizing statements, even if it's in a tweet. And I missed not having you write for us on Saturday because of the couple of things you wrote, and only you wrote them. And it was good. It was good to read it. So here they are. Here are the tweets, and they're good. Guys, I know the 2009 defense. I studied them closely during and after. They were better than this. But for sheer resilience and grit, these black shirts are unmatched. Their offense is sabotaging them. And they keep fighting. Unbelievable toughness. That's the first tweet. Second tweet. That's some of the worst game management I can remember. Nebraska's defense deserves so much better. Third tweet. And this is good because I had written, Nebraska was winning the Iowa way a couple weeks ago, and I was kind of right, but I wasn't right entirely, and you nailed it. The biggest difference between 8-2 Iowa and 5-5 Nebraska is that Iowa accepts that its offense stinks and manages the game accordingly. Okay, so you're right. You're watching the game, and I think you're tweeting all that. Those are all three very different things. The defense, the way it is, the offense, the way it is. I'm not asking you to say how you arrived at those tweets, but like as you're watching the game, what's unfolding in your mind and what seems to be wrong with Nebraska's offense at this moment that seems unique?
Okay, so first of all, I think context is important, and there is value, and there has always been value to sort of being in the crowd when you are writing about what's happening. Because you pick up on there's an emotion, there's a heightened emotion and intensity to it that you don't necessarily get on television or in a press box. Like you just feel it more in the stadium. So I was there Saturday with my brother and his sons and my two sons. So it's the six of us. And, the first half is just like, what in the world is going on here? I mean, Heinrich Harburg is doing his best Bo Davis impression, and Jeff Sims comes in and is a mess, and it's just like it's almost like they're trying to turn the ball over. Like if they were trying to turn the ball over, it wouldn't look much different than it looked. And at the same time, you've got this incredible contrast with a defense that will not give up. They don't give up. It's incredible to watch. And they're talented, yes, but more than that, I think they've just got this incredible heart. They believe in each other. They clearly believe in their coordinator and their coaches. So it's setting up very 2009 like, where you have this incredible contrast between one side of the ball and the other. And yet 2009, for all of its flaws, and my gosh, there were a lot of flaws, it felt like they were at least trying to protect Ndamukong Suh.
Right.
They were terrible. They were futile, but they were trying to protect the asset. And when I watch Nebraska now, it doesn't feel like they're trying to protect their defense at all. And when you watch that fourth quarter, as you did just as closely as I did, but you're watching them march down the field, and every first down feels like, climbing a mountain.
Right.
And yet somehow they're doing it. And they get down inside the 10-yard line, and there has never been a more obvious run the ball into the pile and kick a field goal than that moment. I mean, you just have a feel for these things. And I must have said it over and over to my kids. We're sitting in the north end zone, like row 20, and it's like, run the ball, kick the field goal, run the ball, kick the field goal. And to watch them do that and basically throw their defense under the bus again, and then just have the air sucked out of the stadium, it was no surprise at that point that Maryland went down the field and kicked the field goal. I mean, but if you kick a field goal and you take the lead and you're 2 minutes from bowl eligibility and you need your top 10 defense in the country to go out there and make one more stop, they're going to do it. Going to do it. And I was so disappointed in Matt Rule in that moment, not Marcus Satterfield, in Matt Rule, that he failed to recognize the conditions of the situation and just let his defense go out there and win the game. And I thought Tom, wrote about it well yesterday. You guys obviously handled it well on Sunday. But this idea that this isn't what we do because we're trying to teach kids how to cut it loose and go win the game. Like, that's the equivalent of like taking my 4-year-old daughter out to the top of the tallest hill in the neighborhood on her 3rd day riding a bike and taking off the training wheels and just pushing her. Like, what are you doing? Go win the freaking football game.
Yeah, I think you've articulated that well.
And I also would challenge Rule on this point. And by the way, Matt Rule has done an awesome job. Like, he's a great communicator. But if you're going to say this is a developmental thing and we got to show confidence in our guys, does that mean that you're not going to go have a different starting quarterback in 3 months? Because I have a hard time believing that, right?
Right.
If this was Adrian Martinez in 2018 and Scott Frost stands up there and says, we want to show Adrian confidence in the moment and we want to, teach him to cut it loose and make the big throw. Okay, I can buy that because he's probably a 4-year starting quarterback, right? And you want to teach him young. I don't buy that they have next year's starting quarterback on the roster. So I feel like he's kind of talking out both sides of his mouth where he wants to say we're teaching confidence at the same time. I don't think your starting quarterback is on this roster. So I don't know. I found it all very troubling. And you guys handled it well and asked the right questions. And I just thought it was a very, very unnecessary error at a moment when the game was very winnable.
Yeah. We welcome Tom Shatel.
Hey guys.
Hi, Tom.
There he is.
Sorry, I was downtown. I didn't read the memo. I should have just spent the night at the arena last night.
Yeah. That was a hell of a game. We just started talking football, so Dirk's answer was the first thing.
Yeah.
We talked about volleyball initially, but you covered you wrote about it Saturday night, and then you wrote about it again on Monday about that 3rd and goal play. And I think, yeah. So unpack what you thought of that moment.
Well, what I really appreciate the fact that Rule and Tony White and Satterfield both, they show up every week and it's like no big deal. And maybe this is the 1st-year honeymoon, but they show up and answer every question and they explain what they did and why they did it. And I after years of the brush offs and the cold shoulders and the next questions and I don't know what you're talking about, and I really appreciate this. I think it was something Satterfield said yesterday. Maybe Evan remembers this. But I thought he said that Rule told him at the beginning of the drive with Chubba, he was thinking, well, are we just going to play it safe here because this guy's coming in cold? And he said that Rule told him, no, go win the game.
Right.
Well, so when you tell Satterfield that, he's going to pass. He likes to pass the ball. That's what is so a little unnerving or maddening about Rule saying he wants to be physical and he wants to run the ball and so on and so forth. Satterfield, I think, wants to pass. It's not unlike many offensive coordinators in Dirk's past and my past. The Sean Watsons and so forth. He wants to throw it. So I think when they said attack, go score, he's going to, you're in the 10-yard line, inside the 10, he's going to throw it. He's going to throw the corner, the fade, which I hate, the other stuff. I mean, it is maddening because a field goal would have done it, and we don't know what Maryland would have done down 3. Maybe their offense reacts differently. Maybe they start choking up a little bit. They got the interception. They got momentum. Maybe that's when they, and the mess defense finally just broke. But yeah, it's I don't know. Whatever. Here's the thing about Rule too. Whenever head coach says something, to take it with a huge grain of salt, because I think he's trying to manage his team right now. I think absolutely they're going to go after another quarterback. I think they have to, but he can't say that right now. He's trying to win another game and keep his quarterbacks from, whatever. So yeah, these guys, they don't always, they may say something, but they definitely mean another sometimes, because they're trying to manage your team or whatever you want to. Some of them just like to lie. I don't think Rule's lying, but yeah, are they going to go after stuff? And to me, that'll be fascinating, guys. Rule has never had the portal. He's built from, within, or he's built fast, whatever he's been, but now he can go get the portal. And so how is he going to react to that? And all that stuff is for like in 2 weeks, but anyway.
So a couple thoughts. So first of all, like when we go into a press conference on Monday, there's an opportunity to talk about whatever we want. We're obviously asking him questions. From my perspective, and this is where I sit right now, the 3rd and goal call was not great. But to me, the larger thing is the quarterback play is so bad that like it's cost them games on top of whatever happened on that 3rd and goal play. And it's been, to me, pretty striking. I mean, the quarterback play against Maryland, and you guys have institutional memory here. You've watched a lot of Nebraska football games. I can't think of a game where the quarterbacking was worse than maybe 04 Texas Tech. And that's really not fair, because Bo Davis was thrown into a situation he didn't know what he was getting into. All of these quarterbacks have played way more football than Bo Davis did, and that's what we got. So it's about as bad as we've ever seen it in terms of 5 turnovers, a lot of misses, just missing guys that are open, not knowing what to do, not going on script, all kinds of stuff. So there's that. And then I thought the second most pertinent question is what I hear from fans a lot right now is not Matt Rule 3rd and goal, but Marcus Satterfield. And so those are the 2 questions I asked. I think on some level, we probably could have asked more direct questions about that 3rd and goal play, because maybe if they just kick a field goal there, I think Dirk's contention that the defense makes a stop is probably a reasonable one, and Nebraska's in a bowl game. Was that Mike Riley's 3rd and 7? Was that Frank Solich's 3rd and 10 in 2002 Texas? I don't know.
Well,
I think, I mean, what made it frustrating too is like in a vacuum, maybe you can make the argument that you throw, but like as bad as Nebraska had already turned it over 4 times, they were on their 3rd string quarterback. The defense is a strength. Yeah. The running game for Nebraska is a strength. The passing game is not. You're decimated with injuries. So like that was a moment to me where you're not looking at the circumstances of what you have. You're looking at from an offensive coordinator perspective. Maybe they see something in Maryland's secondary, the way that they're defending it, and he's so caught up in that you can't see that maybe that's not the best call for your 3rd string quarterback and the personnel that you have out there. That to me was a tension point between what they want to do and what they have and what they're maybe able and willing to do.
Evan, here's what I'll say is I think that Matt Rule was still in NFL mode, and he would not he probably disagree with what I just said, but I think what he's thinking is a field goal. No, with 2 minutes left and this quarterback and this doing this and going down the field, they're going to go down and score a touchdown. We need to get a touchdown here because because a field goal probably won't be enough.
But why would you think that? Your defense has played out of their minds.
I'm not trying to defend it. I'm saying that I think he's still in that place of like analytics that says you got to go for the touchdown there, and you can't just run it because you're not giving your team X, Y, and Z. I don't know. I don't think that Talia Tagovailoa would have led them to a touchdown. I really don't. But I think in his mind, he's like, hey, 2 minutes or whatever was left, Patrick Mahomes, whatever. It doesn't make any difference. I don't think there's a lot of I don't think that's a defensible call when you really think about it. And I think eventually he'll be able to say, yeah, we should have done something different. But the quarterback play in general is not good. I mean, it's really poor.
And it's getting worse. Why is it getting worse?
Well, once Harburg's hurt, he's backed up. And did you watch the Purdue game, Dirk, on TV?
Oh yeah.
That's about as much abuse as I've seen a quarterback in Nebraska take since Jamal Lord. I mean, that was the physical toll that he took in that game was significant. He's really tough. I mean, he's a tough kid. So I respect that about him. And I think he's hurt. I think he's banged up. I think he's kind of seeing things because he's gotten jacked up by defenses. I don't know what's wrong with Sims. I don't know that you can put him back out there. I mean, whatever it is, it's not working. And then Chuba, obviously, they're trying to protect him. But I thought Chuba, for the one drive he was in there, I'm like, yeah, this guy looks like he knows what he's doing. And he kind of did, you know. I'd like to see more Chuba.
So coaching is so, I mean, obviously, coaching is so hard. And there are, 1.7 million decisions in a given year that Matt Rule has to make, most of which we never even are aware of. But there are these inflection points, right? There are these moments, like these crescendos, that you have to get right. Man, 3rd and goal in that situation, that is an inflection point in the season. That's one that you have to get right as a head coach. And those are the things, like, you can say to yourself, and again, Matt Rule has done a very good job, I think. I think they've exceeded expectations. But when you start going down Nebraska's recent history and say, well, that's just a minor setback, won't be that big of a deal. And then you start like going back through Mike Riley and Scott Frost, and it's like, okay, those first year setbacks, they linger, right? They really linger. And they either cost you credibility with the fan base or with your football team, or they just kind of create this curse mentality that permeates the program. They needed that one. They really needed that one. And especially if they don't get one of the next two. Like, my gosh, can you imagine going into December and January at 5-7, thinking about that thing all off season?
So, Dirk, you weren't at Minnesota with us, but Tom remembers this. So do you remember? So the play the Jeff Sims throw right before he throws it, Tom goes, "Uh-oh."
Oh yeah. I said, "Uh-oh."
And then it's picked off. And it's like he predicts it in real time.
Sam, I said it last weekend too.
You said a lot of uh-ohs on Saturday.
I said, uh-oh. I mean, it's funny. It's not funny. I mean, it's here's my question. We talked about this in the last podcast, I think. The idea of the quarterback coach. Now, Rule says, not changing, not, don't be ridiculous, so forth. He's got to say that now. And he may look, it's hard to judge an offensive coordinator when you don't have any frontline players on that offense. I mean, they're all backups, basically. They're young guys who never played. They're guys who would not start for another Big Ten team, just up and down. They don't have any dudes. They don't have a lot of, they're just trying to get through this thing. But I'm wondering, going forward, in the age of the portal quarterback, is it smart to have a quarterback coach that is going to attract the portal quarterbacks? And if Satterfield is the guy who's going to attract those guys, are they going to come? I don't know the answer to that question.
You mentioned like the comparison to Minnesota, and having watched these guys all year, including Michigan State. And in some ways, Sam, that makes the decisions on Saturday even more surprising because, like, if you're Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield, I would think instinctively, like the dog that's gotten beaten too much, like, don't you just go into a shell there? Like, I would think your instinct would be over conservative, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to let my quarterback lose this game for us. I would think that would be your default mentality. That was certainly Sean Watson's default mentality by the end of 2009.
Yes.
And I'm not defending Sean Watson because I thought he did a very poor job, but like, I'm just surprised that after having seen all of this, including Saturday's offensive debacle, that they didn't, that wasn't their instinct, right? In that moment, like they've just turned the ball over 4 times, 5, if you count the one that got called back, and and you're seriously going to tempt fate one more time, just like you did at Minnesota. It's kind of bizarre. And I think the NFL part of it is probably a decent explanation. Like, you're just kind of in this mindset that we have to score. We have to score. And I just think the circumstances of that moment told a very different story.
For sure. Do you as you listen to these press conferences, and I don't know if you listen to them real time or after the fact or whatever, do you get this sense that Matt Rule, outside of his quarterback position, which has to be addressed in honestly a different way, is building the kind of culture that's going to be sustainable in a new Big Ten where you don't play all these teams from the West and you're having to mix in, tougher opponents? I
don't know. It's going to change so much over the next couple of years. I mean, Nebraska they've really missed an opportunity this year at the same time that they've exceeded expectations, which is sort of an oxymoron. But I think from a messaging standpoint, I think he's really good at, not only with the media and with the fan base, but with his team. I think he's made a lot of, the defense is an incredible story. I mean, just an incredible story. And so by most objective measurements, I think you have to say that he's succeeded. He's met expectations so far. But as you just noted, I mean, it's going to go from junior varsity to varsity here real quick. And I don't know if Nebraska's ready for that. I mean, you watch Washington and Oregon play, even the California schools, and I don't know if Nebraska is ready for that. It certainly feels like this has become a little bit of a MAC program on the western frontier of the Big Ten, and they've got to find a way to raise their level. I think the defense is ready. The offense has got so far to go. I mean, I think a quarterback would make a huge difference, but even with the quarterback, I don't know if they've demonstrated what's necessary to compete with Oregon and Washington, and not to mention Penn State, Ohio State, schools like that. So it'll be interesting. They're not going to have much choice. They're going to kind of get thrown into the fire, I think.
What kind of quarterback? Huh? Like what kind of quarterback? Not just like he's great, but like what? A runner? A thrower? What?
Well, you need a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix. I mean, why they're. I mean, those 2 quarterbacks alone have put those programs over the top. They certainly have a lot going for them, but they're where they are because those quarterbacks. They make plays, and they make a lot of them, and they're accurate. They don't throw it high over the guy's head, or they don't miss. Then you know what I mean? They're every play. So I think Nebraska's defense is it's a bowl caliber defense. It's a Big 12 North champion caliber defense, I think. Or Big 10 West, sorry. The offense has got to catch up. I think offensive line, you get some really good linemen in there that can move people and get a high caliber quarterback. And then you'll catch up in a hurry with those guys. You may not beat them, but I think it won't be a mismatch. But how many years are we away from that? Interestingly enough, it's surfacing that UCLA is going to fire Chip Kelly. So what are they saying? We're not good enough. What we're doing isn't going to work in the Big Ten. So what kind of style are they going to have going forward? Does that mean they're not doing this Oregon Duck, whatever offense? The Chip Kelly offense isn't going to work in the Big Ten. So already, if they're going to go to a different style, they're adjusting to the Big Ten. People thought the Big Ten would have to adjust to the Pac-12 schools. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. And I got to tell you, USC's not far from making a change either. May not be happening this year, but I can see where that thing is going, and it's not going to end well.
He seems like he wants to retire.
I know.
He's like, I want to retire soon. Anyway, yeah, I what's interesting is that, let's say Nebraska, for argument's sake, won the next two games. It'd be 7-5. It would be an incredible season for Nebraska, even with those two weird losses. I don't know that Nebraska's going to win the next two games, but let's say they did. And then they go into the transfer portal and there's just momentum. There's like, oh boy, now we're, it's rock and roll time. Or you can lose those next two and you're having to make a case, which I think is challenging. I'll say this for Satterfield. He's a lot more personable than Sean Watson. Sean Watson kind of looked down his glasses at you. But he did. What I would say about Satterfield is they either got to let him do what he wants to do. And I don't think it involves running the option from the 1992 offense.
No. Or
they got to make some sort of alteration. And I think one of the challenges here is that Rule, he can micromanage a little bit. And I think part of what's happened a little bit is just they're trying to Frankenstein the offense together. And I still think Harburg's got ability. I really do. And I like his toughness and his insight. You can't get him jacked up though. And he's hurt. I think he's been hit really hard and he's hurt his ankle. And, I think he's just really hurt. I think they got a bunch of guys playing hurt, but Harburg alone is just the amount of punishment he took. It was Jamal Lord-esque. And of course, as people recall, and Dirk and Tom recall this, in Jamal Lord's season, the guy that they wanted to play refused to play. So he chose not to play, that being Kurt Dukes, right? So they didn't have a choice. They had to play Lord. So I just feel like they've got to try to protect that quarterback more. You can't have him deal with this level of punishment, right?
Yeah, I just think, look, they got no chance offensively this year. I mean, that's clear. They got too many injuries. Their personnel, everybody realizes they're putting it together with, Scotch tape and rubber bands. Like, I get it, right? But I think it's got to be better than this. And like in the absence of real skill and execution, you've just got to support your defense. Like, you've got to find a way to be somewhat of a stabilizing force out there for one of the best defenses in the Big Ten, if not college football. Like, that's been the hard part to watch. Is it's like, gosh, you got one side of the ball that's just playing out of their minds. Like,
right.
And I hate to have them waste that. That's the thing. Like, if they sucked, they sucked. Like, whatever. If they were 3-9, I think people would kind of, punt on it and they would say, well, next year's coming, we'll be better. But it just feels like they're missing an opportunity, both because of the schedule and because of the defense. And that's the hard part to swallow. Is it's like it's kind of sitting there for them, right? And like I think it would be actually easier if they just outright sucked on both sides of the ball, because then you could just kind of say, whatever. You could shrug your shoulder. Yeah, you could do it like last year, right? You could just say, well, that was Scott's fault. We'll figure it out next year.
Nope.
But man,
he didn't take over that kind of program.
Yeah, and Sam, I also think you touched on something a little bit earlier that's really important, and it'll sound obvious, but the difference between 2-0 in these next two games and 0-2 is vast, right? I mean, if
1-1 and 0-2 is vast.
Yeah, it is. And so no matter everything that's happened to this point, they got to find a way to get one more. They just really do.
I agree. We'll see what.
Can I touch real quick on, we were talking about culture earlier, and like, I don't know that we've had that discussion this year where we've asked, what's the culture like? Is everyone bought in? And I think it's really interesting because, and I'm going to write about this for this weekend, but when you look at Wisconsin, and some of the things that their players have said this week, they have the exact same record as Nebraska right now. They have a first-year coach who was hired a day after Matt Rule was, and those guys over there are searching, man. I mean, if you listen to some of those player interviews, they're saying, who doesn't buy in, who doesn't give a crap. Let's weed those guys out, and that's the talk in Madison this week, and that's not the case at Nebraska. It's been, they've stuck to the tone that Matt Rule has set, starting 1-0. We'll go in 1-0 every week. Next play, what's next? And I think that's maybe the biggest thing that you can take out of this year, other than maybe what the defense has done, is that there is a culture being set. Because if you listen to some of those Wisconsin player interviews, that sounds a whole heck of a lot like Nebraska last year or Nebraska 2017, when there's so much infighting and all you have left is to kind of look to your left and your right and say, who's not pulling their weight. So I do think that's as much change as there's going to be with the offense and maybe with some of the staff. Like the thing that they have set this year has been that culture, because there've been stretches, and Nebraska's in one now, of adversity, and to their immense credit, they've stuck together. And I think that's one of the reasons that you can point to, amid all the flaws, that they could win another game or maybe two, and we'll see how it finishes.
Well, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, we probably, there's no way to know, but how do you hold together a locker room where one side of the ball is playing as well as they are and the other side is playing as poorly as they are? I mean, that is tough, right?
Ask Iowa. Yeah.
So I think that's, if they can figure out a way to just keep these guys together for the next few weeks, I mean, that's a minor achievement in itself, just because of the dichotomy of the two sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I'll say this, at Iowa, the way Ferentz has set it up, all the bear goes on him. He's done a good job of not creating. None of it's on the players. It's all on Ferentz, and there's a gift in that. If you have the intestinal fortitude to handle it, you create. I don't think there's an offense versus defense issue at Iowa, and I don't think there is at Nebraska either. And I think Rule spoke to that. Like we got them away from, having to bail out the offense to, don't worry, you can't control what they do anyway. So, you just play the best snaps you can. And I always think that the culture piece, guys, is always more injectable into the defense, because so much of defense is about effort and toughness and, relentlessness and perseverance and all that. On the offensive side of the ball, 1-2 only gets you so far. And the reality is, I don't think there's anybody on that field that wants it more than Heinrich Haarberg. And it's not enough, because 1-2 gets you hurt when you're a quarterback. If you want it too much, that you end up getting crushed. 1-2 does not deliver precision, and it doesn't deliver processing. And so I think those are the areas where I think Nebraska's got to get better. I think their culture is actually sound, and the concrete is almost dry, and I think it's good concrete, good cement, whatever you want to call it. But they got to get better at the execution part. You can't just culture your way to a good offense. You must have great intellect, great minds plotting this offense. You must have great skill, great speed, great precision. And the reality is, Nebraska has not had that very consistently in its time in the Big Ten. They've been better on offense on the whole than they have on defense, but they have not had all of those things all at once, save for maybe, I don't know. There was maybe a brief moment where Mike Riley had it figured out in 2016, and they took care of the ball and they played pretty good football, and then Tommy Armstrong got hurt. So there's been moments, but not very many moments. And to be honest with you, that's been part of the issue that Nebraska's had to get through in the Big Ten. Should we talk about hoops? Briefly with Nebraska hoops. Okay, so they're 3-0. They just beat Rider. They play Stony Brook tonight. Then they're going to play Oregon State. They're going to be favored in every game they play until Creighton. So the question is, now that you've seen kind of this new lineup of players, what do you think of it?
Dirk, go ahead.
I think they have more potential answers than they've had. They have more, if it's a poker game, they have more, they have more outs, right? They have more ways to win. I think there's, whether it's Tominaga shooting or, some actual offensive firepower in the post. I think their depth is a little bit better. I think if you were dropping this thing in the Mountain West Conference, you'd say, boy, I think this is an NCAA tournament team. I think, they got a lot of guys who'd be good Mountain West players. I think, Tominaga gives them enough firepower to get them through some droughts. But gosh, you're asking, I'm not sure. Basketball usually comes down to how good are your best players. And I don't know if their best players are good enough. I certainly don't know if they have 5 of them. So I think that's the question. I think the depth is better. I think the athleticism is okay. I think, they've got a fighting spirit to them. I just don't know if their best guys are good enough.
Who are their best guys, Tom? Or anybody?
Well, I like that they're 2 big guys. I like that they're older. They appear to be leaders. Appear to have a little court savvy. I think that really helps in the Big Ten. I think you need that. And he's been able to get that 2 years in a row. I just, Big Ten is. I've been watching the last couple of nights and the last week, and it's not great. It's I'm sure it'll be good and solid, and it'll be hard to win games and all that. But there's not a lot of great talent in the Big Ten. The other night I like the collection of players. I think they have a lot of real interesting pieces. He's just got to put them together. And I really think Juwan Gary, whenever he shows up, is a big piece. I think he brings a lot of edge to the defense. I think, and the whole picture. But the other night they fell back into that deal where I thought, oh God, they're going to lose a Ryder. I mean, they looked like they were lost on offense, and they weren't really playing good defense. And it looked to me like Tominaga didn't know where to fit on the court yet. They got a bunch of some new guys, and he's not getting the ball maybe where he wants it. It was his first game, and all of a sudden he made a couple of shots, and things kind of took off. So they escaped that one. But I was watching Iowa last night, and Iowa looked really good, but they made a lot of shots. They weren't playing a lot of defense on Creighton. Of course, Creighton's hard to play, but what I thought was really interesting is the Missouri Valley factor in this thing now. Creighton, I mean not Creighton. Iowa got this kid from I guess from Valpo, Crikey.
Yes.
Cricky, whatever, however you say it. I'm not thinking about Don Cricky in the Orange Bowl. Cricky, he's a nice player, and that's what Fred did with the kid from Bradley Mast. These guys are nice players. I think they'll be good Big Ten players. I think Nebraska, they stay healthy, and Lawrence helps them at the point. And they figure out a way to. I think they're going to play defense. I think those 2 big guys are going to play well. I think that I can finish in the middle of the pack. I mean, again, I don't want to get at the risk of getting Bruce Chubbuck mad at me. I think they can make a run to the NIT, but can they get on the NCAA bubble? It would help to beat Creighton or K-State. K-State's not been really good, but that's a hard game to win down there.
They haven't. Not yet.
I look at their schedule and say, they should be 9-2 coming out of the non-conference. Now, can they beat Izzo early in Lincoln? They play them early in December. And they look like they're going to be a work in progress for a while. He'll figure it out. But maybe it's helpful to play them early. Could they somehow beat Minnesota up there early and beat Michigan State at home? That's a lot to ask for, but if you get those two, hey, it's it can be a fun year.
So I think before, just real quick, I think old and big is generally a good bet in this league, and Hoiberg is old and he's big, right? And those are good things. I think his roster composition, whether he fell into it or did it deliberately, it doesn't really matter. But it's kind of a bet, I think, on the Big Ten being down, being weak. I think it's the type of roster that you send out there if you feel like the league's not very good or below normal standards. And he might be right about that. If he's right about that, I think it's the type of roster that can finish 500 in the Big Ten. If he's wrong about that, I think they're just going to be out talented a lot of nights.
If he's right, they finish 500 in the Big Ten and they go 9-2 in non-conference play, they'd be 19-12.
And I just was going to say, I think the next couple of weeks will be really interesting because this roster still hasn't all been healthy. I don't think at any point since they've been together through the summer, through the bye, the exhibition, John Gary's still out. So you want to
because of
no, I know, but they haven't had all their guys available. They don't even they haven't even figured out kind of what their rotation's going to be because not everybody's been there. So to their credit, they've won these games to this point in ways that Nebraska basketball does not always do over the years. But I think in the immediate, in this month of November, that's the interesting thing is, can they get all their guys back, figure some things out so that when these chances in Creighton and Kansas State and so forth come, that they're ready to go, or you're going to have to figure it out on the fly. I think that's what makes these next couple weeks more compelling to me, because I do think they scheduled themselves in such a way that they can actually build some confidence and buy themselves some time as they figure themselves out.
Okay. That is our pick.
Last thought.
There's one more. Oh my God. Here we go.
I've heard a lot of comments about the schedule, and there is a potential drawback to this, everybody. They could go 19-12 and get left out because their computer ranking sucks. We should probably acknowledge at some point that this isn't like a shoe in to work. If their computer number is really low and they get left out because they didn't play anybody in the month of November, that might come back to bite them a little bit.
Cross that bridge when you get to it, right? That's just kind of where this program is.
Oh, for sure. That would be, your NET rating can be affected and improved by margin of victory, and Nebraska is going to need to win their games by a lot of points. That is our Pick Six podcast for this week. Thank you to Dirk for coming in. We'll check back with him maybe in December after the season is over and see what's what and who's who. As for Tom and Evan, I'm Sam. I think we'll be back next week before the Black Friday game, before Thanksgiving to give the listeners a message about holiday spirit or something. Thanks for listening, everyone.